office downstairs. Anyway, I could hear him coming up the stairs, and I was thinking, I better go now. I better go because Art would talk for long periods of time. And I was tired that day. I probably just came from farmer's market or something. But he caught me up there. He caught me there. He said, Okubo is coming to town, and Okubo is the Japanese owner of the Sun Peak ski resort. So he said, what do you want to do about it? And I said, well, I don't know, I guess we'll have a meeting. So we had a meeting, and Rus was working with us at the time, and Art got Rus to write him a letter. Okubo, a letter about the land, you know, that we want all development stopped. And it was a decision made a long time ago all along by the elders, saying that they want all development stopped up there. They didn't want it to go any further. So that's what Art included in his letter, and then I and my husband and Bev and Ken Dennis and Mike Arnoux went up there to deliver the letter to him. We didn't just deliver it, we read the letter out at their meeting up there. We kind of crashed. How I found out about the meeting was I phoned up the Sun Peaks and I said, Art was chief then, so I said, I need to find out where the meeting is. So they told me, we went up there and we read out the letter. And then we decided to set up a teepee up there. So the next weekend after Farmers Market, I and Bev and Irene went up there and we picked out a place for the teepee. And we had a big, it was near Thanksgiving, so we called a big Thanksgiving dinner. We had about 200 people there. And after that, we didn't take the teepee down, we just left it. And we started all of that action up Sun Peaks. We had to move lots and lots of times. They'd get injunctions or whatever, and we'd move to another place. And altogether, there were like 75 arrests of our people up in that area while we were doing that. So that's how I began working more steadily with Art. And local, I'll talk, just mention some of the local things that Art worked on. One of them was our Nisconnet Douglas Reserve. Like we have a huge reserve, over 1 million acres for our 3 communities that have the Douglas Reserve. So that is one issue Art worked on. The other was a Harper Lake logging case where they went and logged without a permit in our territory. The traditional use study, which Art worked on, where we mapped out our traditional uses of our territory. The Harper Lake land use principles, where we talked, he got a grant and we developed principles and how we would use the land, not only at Harper Lake, but on our reserve land. The Ruddock Creek mine proposed in our territory. The BC treaty process, he worked with April Thomas on that from the Northern Secwepemc, and they went to Geneva to talk about that. He worked with the Statlium, Daryl Bob and them, and then they worked on that at the UN. The Nisconnet water issue he worked on with Kenichi Matsui, and Kenichi wrote a paper and a book on that research. There's a lot of other issues too that other people will talk about, like supporting Shutuka, the land action there, the Mount Paula issue where they breached the dam, and the Red Chris mine up in the Taltan. He went to all these places. The Unistoten with Togastine Frida, hereditary chiefs meeting up north, the Okanagan Shuswap Confederacy, the Swapemc grassroots meetings, Kinder Morgan, what used to be Kinder Morgan pipeline, demonstrations against federal and provincial policies that chiefs were signing, and the Swapemc Territorial Authority, and I want to talk more about that, the Swapemc Territorial Authority. So my role in Art's work was more at the community level. I and my family and a lot of my relatives are traditional land users. We go out in the land, we pick berries, medicines, hunt, fish, and a lot of our food we get from the land. So I would report to Art about, different conditions of the hunting, the berries, and we would talk about what we need to do to protect it. And Art would take this to like different government levels and right up to the international level. Art always tried to get me to go places like the UN or go here or there, but I said no. I said maybe Irene will go, or maybe Wolverine will go, or April or somebody else will go, and I'll just stay home and do my work in the community. But we always talked about the issues. The 2 main issues I want to talk about is the Secwepemc Territorial Authority, and about our language, which Art really believed in too. So one of the Art started and had worked on a couple of years before his passing was the Secwepemc Territorial Authority and the ways we can assert our sovereignty as Secwepemc. Art began these meetings, and he had many colleagues and helpers who would help us work on this issue. Some of which included Kent McNeil. He's a top Supreme Court lawyer or judge? Professor. Okay, Kent McNeil. And they all came here to our area to work with us on these meetings. Chris Albanetti, lawyer. Michael Ash, anthropologist. And Brian Noble, another anthropologist. Nicole Shabbos, he's partner and a lawyer. Herb Hammond, eco-forester. Jenna Promislow, lawyer. John Burrows, Jim Tully. So Art knew and worked with all of these people, and they were all here and willing to help us on the work we need to do to develop the Secwepemc Secwepemc Territorial Authority. He believed that the people were the collective, the proper title holders, because it was the people, and the people who needed to make the decisions about what happened on the territory. What is happening and how it's affecting us. He said that governments, businesses, anyone wanting to do development on our land had to have our free, prior, informed consent before they could go ahead on any of these developments. He spent many hours and days meeting with grassroots people to hear their concerns and to ideas of how we could work on resolving them. We have so much work to do, and this is what I really want to work on, is the development of our traditional governance and our Secwepemc Territorial Authority. There's so many major decisions that are affecting our way of life on the land, and they're being made without our consent. Well, first of all, without our knowledge, without our consent, and by a few people who are in elected band councils. So they are the ones making decisions which we have no knowledge of, and we absolutely have to stop that. We, the people, have to be in charge of this major decision making, not only in a territory, but on our reserve lands as well. We have to make decisions on how we're going to do business, how we're going to do sustainable development that does not destroy the land and water, how we can become self-determined by providing our own food, making sure our food sources from the land are preserved and protected, how we're going to do our own education, how we're going to manage our own child welfare, our own health. All of these issues, we the people have to decide and determine what we're going to do. Because I understand some of the agreements, they say we have to go by provincial law, provincial policy and provincial law. And I say, no, we do not. We go by Secwepemc law. If we continue as is and we don't develop our traditional authority, we're going to be, okay, holy smokes already. We're going to be constantly reacting and be in a reactive mode, like protesting this development, protesting that development, when we have such more important work to do. So we're calling on all of Art's colleagues and people he knew to continue helping us and work with us on what we have to do. Another quick thing is, Art and I talked about the Secwepemc Language Institute we wanted to form, and we want to have it up at Nisconnet Lake, where we would have total immersion for our people, because our language is on the really severely endangered list. We have, our elders are all over the age of 70 and over. That are the only fluent speakers left. And I and Flora work every day on language, and we really need a place. We need infrastructure, we need money for teachers, for elders, for buildings, to pay students to be in these immersion classes. And so far we've just been running like on small grants. So in conclusion, there's no person who has just stepped up like and taken over all of the work that Art has been doing, and we all have to work together as a collective and keep on with the work that Art started and wanted to achieve. And I was just thinking, like with Art and Wolverine and Ken and Irene and all of the strong people gone, it's so easy to give up and just say, you know, it's just too hard, but that's not an option. We have to keep going. We have to keep working until we achieve full self-determination of our people. We must work together and work collectively. Art really wanted people to work collectively as a group to uphold our responsibilities as Secwepemc. Take our rightful place on the land, have our languages restored, protection of the land, restoration of families and communities. Some of Art's last words to me was that we have to be smart, strategic, and organized, and I always think of that, what we have to do. And if we don't do all that, like in the words of Tyagi Alford, we will just be empty shells of our former selves. So, Rus Diabo.
How much time do we have? Each one? 10 minutes. I heard 15.
Yeah, I heard 15 too.
Cano said 15. No, thank you for that, Dr. Janice. That was a good introduction, I think, to the panel. My name is Rus Diabo. I'm a member of the Mohawk Nation in Ganawage, and my connection here to Nisconnet and Adams Lake has been working with Bobby Manuel, the late Bobby Manuel, before I started working with Art Manuel, and also with Art Manuel. And Janice mentioned the traditional use study. Well, in 1997, I was asked to come out and help work on a traditional use study that Bobby and others had started here at Nisconnet and Adams Lake. And so I moved out here from out east to be the research director of that traditional use study, and basically reorganized it because they were following along the government guide for how to do traditional use studies, where they said start out with an annotated bibliography of everything that mentions Secwepemc people. And so when I came here, that's what they had several people doing, is just putting a bibliography together. But they were telling me when I came here, they said, well, our elders are dying off. There's a lot happening on our, yes, there's a lot happening on our land, a lot of development, and we have to do something about it. Janice, referred to that. That's why I say it's a good introduction. So we reorganized the traditional use study to move from doing an annotated bibliography to doing historical, archival historical record collection to get the history of the area. And also we organized to do a land use and occupancy study. And I just wanted to get a guy I knew, Terry Tobias, who's a professional in that area, to come and just do the mapping. But Chief Ronnie Jules from Adams Lake and Chief Arthur Manuel from Nisconnet said, no, we want to train our people to learn how to do this. And that's a much more difficult project because, you have to train a number of people. And not everybody's going to wind up, doing the job. And that's what we did. We wound up going through, and we wound up having two researchers that survived the training process and did the interviews. And they interviewed everybody 18 years and up. The method we used was map biographies, everybody 18 years and up, male and female, that were willing to do maps. We interviewed. In fact, we had to go to Matsqui prison because Wolverine was there because of what happened at Gustafson Lake. We had to go down there to ask him if he would agree to be part of the project and do a map. And I took the researchers with me, and we went in. They were both women, and they didn't like going into an all-male maximum security prison. But that's where we went, and we met with Wolverine in the gym. And I explained the project to him. I knew he would be an important person to do a map because he used the land, and he was an elder. And so I knew it would be important to capture his information. And he agreed to do it. So I told the two researchers, the interviewers, I said, okay, you have to interview him for his interview as long as it takes. It took several days because he had a lot to say. And I told them, I said, okay, I have to go to a meeting with Art in Toronto, and I'll see you later. And they didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after because they were mad I left them in that prison to do that interview with Wolverine. Every day the men were all looking at them, when they had to go in. But that was an important project because in the end, the traditional use study gave a snapshot of what was happening here, and that was done in the 1990s. It's still an important study because it gives important history of what happened in the area here to Nisconnet and Adams Lake. And also the land use study showed the Secwepemc people from these two communities use land from the Fraser River all the way over to the Rocky Mountains. And in there, we had Doug Elias, an ethnographer, synthesize all this work into the final report. And he used Diane Alexander's human ecology model that she had developed with the Statlium in the western Secwepemc and adapted it over here. And basically what it showed is that there were 7 landscape areas. When you look at the land use that was mapped here, there's 7 landscape areas that the Secwepemc people use. It was a scientifically based approach we took. And it shows, and we didn't use what seems to be happening now, and I guess it's been going on for a while, is a number of the chiefs within the Southern Secwepemc Nation are using James Tate, an ethnographer's work. And he had divided up the Secwepemc Nation territory into what they called divisions. We didn't use those divisions when we did the TUS study. We mapped where the people went. And that showed that there were, like I say, 7 landscape areas that the people were using and I assume are using today. And that was the basis of the TUS. And it was supposed to be a tool, according to the BC government, a tool for what they called the referral process. And the referral process was developed where basically they send letters to the band offices about, oh, we're planning on cutting the forest in an area, we think you might have an interest in. You have 30 days to respond to us. Or we're going to build a housing development. Or we're putting septic tanks in these areas. So it was a whole range, it involves a whole range of government requests, consultation requests to band offices, band councils. And that was developed before the HIDA decision, which came down and said the Crown has a duty to consult. So that even made the process more entrenched. And it's important because each consultation request that comes in affects Aboriginal title. I don't care if it's just a septic tank or cutting a forest or building a subdivision. Whatever it is, if it's coming into the band office and it's happening on your territory, it's going to affect and infringe on your title and rights. Especially if it's a big request like, oh, by the way, we're expanding a pipeline through your territory. Then that's a big consultation request. There's kind of 2 tracks, the kind of smaller stuff you got to deal with, but then when you get a big mega project coming through, that takes a whole bunch of work to figure out how to respond to that. Could be a mine, that could be another one. So these are the things that communities like Nisconnet and Adams Lake, Secwepemc communities, and other communities across Canada have to deal with. And it's all within this constitutional framework. Canada had their first constitution in 1867, and that's when they colonized us. When the British North America Act passed, they divided powers between the federal government and the provincial governments. And we became a subject matter of Indians and lands reserved for Indians. And under that authority, that's where the federal government passed the Indian Act. And set up the reserve system and started controlling and managing us from Ottawa, which is still the case today. That Indian Act is still in place as we sit here today. That's what's controlling the band offices across the country. And the TUS, was meant not to be the be-all and end-all of documenting and substantiating the land traditions of the Secwepemc of Nisconnet and Adams Lake. It was supposed to lead to a larger research agenda to document and substantiate it, the title and rights. And the reason why is under Canadian law, this new constitution, Section 35, it was supposed to be a political agreement. I said it yesterday. Section 35, there was supposed to be a political agreement about what Aboriginal treaty rights means in the Constitution. But the governments, the province premiers and the prime ministers ran out the clock. And so the Supreme Court took over in 1990, starting with the Sparrow case. And then, for the past years, they've been handing down legal decisions like Delgamuuk, like Haida about the duty to consult, like Delgamuuk about Aboriginal title, and the Chilcotin case about Aboriginal title. But the burden of proof is on the group that says that they have title. So that means if you're going to assert you have title, you have to prove it. And that means you have to collect historical and cultural information, which basically costs millions of dollars to collect. And then you have to launch a constitutional challenge in court if you want to. Well, the way the Delgamuuk decision left it in 2014, they said there's potential Aboriginal title and established Aboriginal title. They said the Chilcotin proved part of their territory has Aboriginal title, so they granted them Aboriginal title. But even in the Chilcotin case, they said the radical or underlying title belongs to the Crown. And they pointed to the Royal Proclamation of 1763, but that's based on this idea of the doctrine of discovery, planting the flag. And that's what we're still faced with. Because somebody planted a flag, King George III, back in 1763, as BC became part of Canada, former British colony. That's how they claim they have sovereignty and territorial integrity over these lands. And if you want to challenge that, if you want to establish that you have Aboriginal title, there's only two ways. You either seek a court declaration like the Chilcotin did, or you negotiate. And the only negotiation process really in Canada is the Comprehensive Land Claims Policy, which Pierre Trudeau announced in '73. Which Justin Trudeau is implementing today, his father's policy, land claims policy. And that's the BC Treaty Commission process. And that's what they're saying to, those who are outside of the BC Treaty process. If you want to establish title, you have to go through that process. But that process is set up to get certainty for the Crown. And certainty is a code word for saying extinguishment, meaning you have to accept the provincial and federal government's jurisdiction and authority over you and accept a municipal type status and have, like the Nisga'a accepted. The Nisga'a accepted, become a municipal type government in Canada. Tawasin accepted that. Manautha accepted that. And they're just waiting for the rest of the groups lined up in the BC treaty process to agree to become municipal type governments and manage municipal type lands, because you're converting reserve lands into local fee simple-ish kind of lands, as Bertha Williams said. And anyways, it's a complicated thing. You can't just write a letter to the government and say, stop all development, like Dr. Janice wanted. That's what Art was faced with. And Art tried to kill the comprehensive claims process and get it to respect the Delgamuuk decision and the Chilcotin decision, for the last couple of decades. Skahish is telling me to wrap it up, so I'm just going to get to the point. I kind of developed a checklist for Indigenous nationhood. I have a website called rusdiabo.com if you want to look at it in more detail, but basically what I'm saying is each Indigenous community has to assess their history, language, culture, and Indigenous law, like Janice was referring to, the Secwepemc laws. You have to do an assessment of what research holdings you have because of the burden of proof being on you to prove that you have title and rights. Because if you don't, you set foot off reserve and try and stop an expansion of a ski resort, you wind up getting arrested, right? You wind up facing injunctions. So having evidence to back up, even if you don't want to go to court and launch a court action, you need this evidence to protect yourself if they take you to court. So you need to know your history, both the oral history and the archival history, the written history, your language, your culture, your law. You need to assess the collection of what information you have about what's happening on your territory. You need access to what they call geographic information systems. You need to know how to make your own maps and who's on your territory, who the third parties are, what's the state of your territory, how much of that's been developed, how much of it is still in good condition for hunting, fishing, trapping, and gathering. You need to know how to manage databases. These young people need to be trained in how to use this technology that's around now to figure out what's going on in your lands. Um, and then one of the things Art was working on, you need to know how to value those things. You know, he always used to say to me, Russ, Aboriginal title and treaty rights are macroeconomic rights, not microeconomic rights. So you need to know what's going on in your territory, your lands, territories, and resources, and you need to know the values of those. And it isn't just economic values, but the environmental values on how to steward and take care of those lands. Because Art was very big on sustainable development, defined by Indigenous peoples to mean looking after our life support index, the things that keep us alive, the things we give thanks for before each meal, before we open our meetings. In our Haudenosaunee communities, we call it the Thanksgiving address for all the things that give us life. And then finally, you need to assess your negotiation, litigation readiness or support. Because if you don't have experienced people in taking on industry and governments in your territory, like lawyers, biologists, people with scientific backgrounds, as well as your traditional knowledge, you need to have an interdisciplinary team advising you about what's going on in Canada, but also internationally. You need experts, that know international law and the instruments and the games that are being played there, because Tom and I and Tupac were talking yesterday about all the things we've seen at the United Nations. Got Indigenous people working with state governments against us, trying to minimize our right of self-determination. And many of the young people coming up don't know who some of these players are and these processes and how the processes are being manipulated by state governments. And so we need to create fora, where we can train and educate younger people about how to navigate their way through not only what's going on across Canada, but also what's going on internationally. So that's kind of the checklist I think each community has to do. They need to know how to do information management and interpret that with knowledge and wisdom, which is something you need the elders to help do, because it's not just analyzing information, but it's understanding what to do with it and how to make a sustainable development plan by our people instead of by Ottawa. Because right now Ottawa has a national plan they're implementing. They've created 2 new departments, Indigenous Services and Crown Relations, and they're processing us from Indigenous Services into Crown Relations through what I call termination agreements. And it's happening here in your own territory, and it's happening across the country. The majority of chiefs across the country and bands across the country are co-opted at one of these tables because of the new fiscal relationship that's being developed by Trudeau. They're using the money to herd us like cattle into the slaughterhouse. Anyways, that's my summary of self-determination and whatever the theme was for Nation Bill. Thank you.
I use a tactic like Russell. After I do my presentation, I said I have a summary. So the summary, usually I can have more minutes, eh? Don't to respect Tupac, I'll try to keep mine pretty short here. My name's Tom Goldtooth, and I'm the head janitor of the Indigenous Environmental Network. And someone said, why you call yourself a janitor? I said, well, I have all the keys. And so growing up on our reserve, I'm both Navajo or Southern Dene, as I coined it, because number of years I've been going up to Northern Dene territories. And so I say I'm Southern Dene, because we're all related. But also I'm Dakota from Minnesota. That's where I live. That's my home. And I felt really good to talk about this topic of Indigenous economy, Indigenous self-determination. And some of us, yesterday, there were people talking about Standing Rock, and I have relatives there with the Hunkpapa people and Dakota and the Ihanktawa. My family, uh, my boys, my daughters, in our way, in the summer, we've always gone over there to the Sitting Bull Sundance, the descendants of the holy man, Sitting Bull. That's where his people reside. They're the Buffalo Clan people. Um, and where they sit in our big council lodge is a place because of that relationship with the Buffalo Nation. So I talk about that, for what happened there, because it goes back to what I talk about when we talk about the direction that we really need to go when we talk about where are we going with our economy? What kind of economy are we looking at building? Do we have that now? If we don't have that now, and then where do we need to go? What's the criteria? Who do we engage that discussion with in our own communities? Who are allies? Who's family in relationship with this concept? Even we have families, as we know, that don't believe in that concept, that we should just get along with the system as it's been created, that it's better than nothing. I think that's something I always want to flag that we have to think about, is that feeling it's better than nothing. At least it's something. Whenever our chiefs went to Parliament, whenever our tribes in the stateside went to Congress of the U.S. government, they came back sometimes with their head down. They wouldn't look at our people, really look in a very proud way. And then they say, well, I didn't get what we needed, but it's better than nothing. At least we got something. And they'd say, well, we can change it later. We can change it later. So these are concepts I talk about because that's deep in our gut. We know that. We have that feeling. It's a generational feeling. It's better than nothing. So I talk about that as very important. And why I mentioned Standing Rock, because that was really a lifting up like that circle of the of our medicine circle of all our lodges from the different directions. The Ocheti Shakomi, the 7 council fires. Our family, we come from the eastern door, way out in the eastern area of Minnesota. The Bede Wakantawa and Wakpe Kute. I go like this because there's the shooters in the leaves. And Bede Wakantawa are the dwellers around the sacred lakes, the sacred water in the lakes. So we are that eastern door of the big 7 council fires. Our relatives in the prairie lands, the Lakotas with the L, their relatives, and the Hukpapa are Lakotas. So that's where there was a revitalization and selection of the keepers and the selection who are going to be our spokesperson in the revitalization of the sacred, of our sacredness, traditional governance system. And a lot of us that were at those meetings, we selected younger generation. Younger generation, our men. One of my boys, Dallas, was selected as one of the men. About 4 men from the eastern Bidawakatans were selected to be part of that sacred council fire. And then the women have women's societies. There's many societies. So I mention this because part of the discussion that we're starting to have is this question of how do we rebuild our indigenous-based economy system. We need to do that. And so in my brief minutes, I wanted to say that because in 1998 in Albuquerque, there was a call by the U.S. government. They wanted to get the tribes together to talk about climate change. 1998. It was set up by the federal agency. And they knew they need to have a meeting with the federally recognized tribes, the band councils on the state side. And we, as the Indigenous Environmental Network, we were 8 years old at that time. We were formed by grassroots, tribal members in these communities like at Navajo. where there's coal mining that our own tribal governments brought in to get royalties and even tax the industry that builds the financial infrastructure of our nation. Let's just say if those companies closed their door right now, the Navajo Nation would collapse financially, economically. The roads, who's going to maintain the road system? Who's going to maintain the police system, the social services? So this is something that's really, we have to explore when we say just transition. How do we make a just transition? We know as families that many of us follow traditional ways. We don't need a lot of that infrastructure, yes, but there's a lot of relatives on it. So if we don't start thinking about this and having dialogues like this at the very community level, there's that potential, and it's already happened, we're going to fight amongst each other. And that's what the corporations want. They have private firms who steady our campaigns and our movements. They already know what's going on the resistance here on this pipeline. They knew what was going on the KXL, the Dakota Access Pipeline. You saw the security corporations that came with their high tech. That was still experimental technology for them to intervene on our drones. They brought the drones down. They took control of that, the drones, that signal. That was still a military that they were playing with. So the stakes are high. I mentioned 1998 because as a grassroots indigenous movement, we had to put a demand on the tribal leadership saying our grassroots communities need to be at this meeting. But not just them, our traditional spiritual people, our medicine people, our practitioners of our traditional way. And there was resistance to that. But we pushed it and we were there. And we brought up the point about prophecies. Back in 1998, there was an agreement of the traditional people that now is the time, this is part of the prophecy, that we need to work together, that we need to address this issue. I wanted to bring that up because quickly going back to where we are at now, I have this little handout. I only have 38 of these. They're over on that table. It's called Indigenous Principles of Just Transition. I like our First Nation people, if there's a representative of a family or one of your Native organizations, get a copy. I'm sorry for the non-Native people, but I need to prioritize this. If you don't get one, it's on our website, Indigenous Network, IEN.org, IENearth.org. But why I mention it, because in our analysis, in our history, yes, we've been on that front line, and we will continue to be on that front line to be there to support our frontline communities. We were formed by frontline communities in 1990, youth and elders and women's societies. We were called upon to shut down toxic waste dumps, nuclear waste dumps, mining, deforestation. It was part of an extractive economy. Now, years later, our analysis that we will continue to do the fight, hold the line, but also to work towards solutions. There's many times that I've been challenged. Well, we know what you're against, but what are you for? In practicality, the foundation of our original instructions is very prominent, very important. We got to know who we are and lift up that history, the original instructions. In summary, where we're at now is how do we shift from basically what we're dealing with is an extractive economy, capitalism. We even share in that. We cannot lie and deny that even we share our part of an economy. If part of the wheeling, dealing, and accommodation agreements is to build our businesses off tar sands money. And then we're also, looking at, we've been part of that. So how do we shift away from an extractive economy to a living economy? That living economy kind of like is agreed upon, that we have to really define for ourselves in our own language. That's another thing we ask, is that you have your own languages in these concepts. Quickly, I just want to mention, we took part in a joint report. It's a bank card report of the banks with Rainforest Action Network, with Oil Change International, Bank Track. We did a study. It just came out a couple months ago. It's on our webpage. But we find that since the Paris Agreement, where all the governments came together and agreed to solve the climate change issues, it's business as usual. We find that the financing of fossil fuel industry since the Paris Agreement in 2015 has increased $1.9 trillion. $1.9 trillion. Tar sands is on the list of investments. RBC, Chase, JP Morgan Bank on the US. So it's business as usual. So in this transition, how do we strategically continue to fight to protect Mother Earth and our lands, but at the same time, how do we also build our... That's really the big question. I wish I had an answer to that, but it's going to take hard work. We have some key principles of what we need to look at. It's in this brochure. And one of the things that came to us, just really half a minute here, is that maybe we need to establish our own policy on an indigenous-based index for living well. Maybe that's a guide for us, our own living index. Over there across the ocean, there's an index of that they have. What was that, Tupac, that they call not living well? Bhutan. Well-being. The happy index. They lifted up a happy index. So that's where, we have all this potential, but it has to be able to recognize, again, our traditions, those original instructions, our sovereignty, what has been talked about by Russell and our sister here, and what are the components of this. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about different aspects of this. Thank you. Pitakiwasi.
Ahua. Good morning again, relative. And thank you for everything you have done to get us together here today and allow this event to take place. This equipment, and we cannot, of course, say any of that without, and it was already done. Thank you. The acknowledgement of our brother Wolverine. There's nothing that we could say here without remembering him. It's always there for us. I also want to thank the folks who built this structure here to put this event. They had the kind consideration to put a map out there in the doorway. If you come in the door, there's a map that has identification of original nations. Somebody said that a little bit earlier about the Star Nations and how what has befallen us, no? And how in our fall, in our landing on the earth, we come to situate ourselves like flowers of Mother Earth, languages, cultures. The peace, the beauty, that they call it, the ways of the beauty. They put a map out there on the door, on the entranceway. I want to say my appreciation, because the map doesn't have that medicine line border between 1763 and 1812, the wars of 18, all of those bullshit, whatever they call it. And then the other one that goes to the Spain, the Louisiana Purchase and Treaty of Paris, all those bullshit lines come from the original bullshit of the Papal Bull. Same smell. But anyway, they didn't have that one. They have the map out there. So I want to say appreciation because I just measured it. That from here, where I come from, they call it the Otham Jebel. They call it the territory of the Otham nations. And in our ancient geography, we know it as the Huehuetlapalan. In our ancient geography, the Huehuetlapalan. Tlapali is a word means red, like Colorado. You see that color there? That's Tlapali right there. That, where the sun, it's for us, that's the east, the place of emergence. And so the ancient red land, Huehuetlapalan, the ancient land of the red earth, when you go into the Grand Canyon, when you come out of there, you're going to be going like this, and there's going to be red dust all the time. Because that's how old it is. The very deep marrow of the bones of the earth, they call it the rock, the stone, the continents. That's what we call it standing. The stone continents that we stand upon. And they're floating. It's an ocean, Mother Earth. She's like a canoe. And that map they have, same as from here, where Huehuetlapalan, you guys know it, Arizona. You come north and you'll land here about this much far on the map. But if you flipped up the other way and made a circle like you had a compass, to the south, you're going to run into that map comes off right there. And there's two nations that are named on that map. It's called the Pame and the Guachichil, no? What is now known as part of Mexico. And those are the countries of my grandfathers and like that. What I say that is because right now, people ask me how are things going, and said they're doing war on us. It's the same war has never end. The same war has never end. And so when we talk about how we're going to continue fighting, you know, like they said, the solution is not going to come from within inside the system. Is that understood? Is that agreed? We know this. The other part of that, if we don't have an answer, there's not going to be one single answer. Just like there's not one single nation on that map. Everybody respond. We might not have one answer, but we can make a collective response. We can respond together. But to do that, we need to have our own systems, which we do. We have to put them to effect, like Rus was saying. When Arthur brought me over here, the last time was with Arthur, he took me to Wolverine's house. And he had the map on the wall. And I was looking at the map. Hey, bro, that's a good map, Wolverine, I told him. And he told me the story, but Rus just explained it to you. So I told Wolverine, you know what, Wolverine? Because I think the last time I seen Wolverine when I was in his house was the last day of coming out of the Gustafson Lake. I was there with him. We did ceremony in there, in the circle. We put the prayer before, and he didn't never come out to surrender. He came out to deliver the indictment against Her Majesty the Queen and the right of Canada, the Papal Bull, all of that. And so when I told Wolverine, that map is really good. And I said, Wolverine, guess what? Now, we're doing the same thing, but at the whole level of the whole continent, and eventually all of Mother Earth. We're going to bring it back. The original self-determination of the star nations, the original nations. We're not going to use their mapping systems, and we're not even going to use their monetary systems. What did I just say? We're not going to use their monetary systems. That doesn't mean we're not going to have commerce or trade. That's commerce. That's a system of exchange, is it not? That's not a dollar bill, or what do they use up here in Canada? They use dollars? What do they use in Canada? Or whatever. And even the Chinese, they have the yen and this and that, and everybody got their own little poker chip for the getting the game. But they call that commerce and they call it economy. It's none of that. All right. A lot of us, we have, even my own father too, he was in the U.S. military. Well, he was in the Navy during the World War II. And a lot of us have that, like this brother here, right there. We go into their wars and we become soldiers. But it's not till we come home and fight for our own nations that we become warriors. But we have sent our fathers and our brothers and sons even to their wars, been in their wars. But when the soldier gets up for order by honor to his family and tradition that sent him to live up to that, he gets an order from his sergeant or from his corporal or from his general or from the president himself, and he knows in his own conscience of his own traditional teaching law, that order is not right. It's not. That soldier have to make the decision. I can't follow that order because a higher law tells me I can't do it. High law. And so when those things happen, and they have happened, even we saw it at Standing Rock, those 7 cavalry soldiers came back and put their knee and said, forgive us, and tell us, guess we're never going to do that again. We're never going to be using our weapons against you again. I don't know if they still mean that, but they hope they do. But anyway, the point is that when those soldiers, our people, when they do that, they get to that point of conscience, they know they cannot commit an act of atrocity because that now is a war crime. And because they cannot say, I never knew, they can't claim they were innocent. That soldier has to make an act of conscience and object and say, I will not follow that order. And if I have to go to jail, then I will go to jail, but my people will liberate me. They will bring me to liberation. The same thing now. I'm going to work. Yes, Father, yes, Mother, yes. Bring me something. Take care of my family, economies. I'm going to work. I'm going to go into my job. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But yet, if that, what you call work, if that is killing Mother Earth, is that a job? Is that really an economy? Or is that also a crime? And that's where we're at. All these so-called economic systems that they give you the paycheck, they put you on that payroll, they pay you with their poker chips. And then what they're doing with you, and you're part of it, and what they're doing to you and with you is they're killing Mother Earth. What do you call that? After World War II, it wasn't a crime until World War II. Finally, they said, genocide is a crime. It wasn't a crime before. It was just considered bad. Just like homicide. Murder's bad, homicide is a crime. Killing people is bad, genocide. Now it's a crime after World War II. But what do we call it? What is it known as? The crime of the destruction of Mother Earth to be a mother to the future generations. That's terroricide. That crime is never going to get prosecuted by the World Bank, by the United Nations, by any of those guys in the UN. None of them are, they're never going to get to that point. So we're saying this. Solutions there are. Solutions we are. Why do I say that? Well, if you have a solution, what you have is balance. You have a solute and a soluble. When they come together in the medium and they achieve an equilibrium, now you have a solution. That's what a solution literally is. You have a system that's in balance with itself. No? Are we in balance with the Mother Earth? No. The world that it is now, we know it is not. We know that the system that with the poker chips, that's not going to give us no, so that's what's causing the illness. That's what's killing the Mother Earth. To treat Mother Earth as if she was a property. To treat your own mother as if she was a prostitute and buy her and sell her. Time is money and space is property. That's the world they live in. That's not, I mean, go ask the Constitution. Go look at your constitutional references. Ask the Star Nation to tell you. Show me the archive of the constitutions of life on this Mother Earth. And they will tell you. You don't have to wait. As soon as you ask a question, the answer is already going to be there. The only question is, how long is it going to take us to understand that answer? Ancient people, they knew it already from the very beginnings of the beginnings of the beginnings. I think he's sneaking up on me. He snuck up on me. Last point. 1 it is. 2 it is. 4 it is. If there is to be 1, there must first be 2, and the 2. There must first be 4, and there must be 2 to make the 4. The 4 seasons, the 4 directions, the 4. right here. All of that, you tie it together. Now you have an economy. Now you have an ecology, because you can't have an economy without a tie to the ecology, in other words, to Mother Earth. Everything else is just artificial. You hit the button and it's going to, like Pac-Man, die off. It's going to die off. It's going to become extinct. That's what's the problem. The extinction of that world is not only imminent, it's already here. It's dying. It wants to take us with them. And some of them, foolishly as they are, think that they're going to escape that. They think that they're eternal for some reason. And they think they're going to create climate apartheid somewhere. I don't know. They're going to escape all this. It's not, no. When I was at the United Nations, I'm going to be closing it. The last time, not too long ago, I went to make some copies for some friends of mine from Mexico. And I was making my copies on the copy machine, and there was a copy document. This is it right here. The World Bank was having a closed session with the members of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and they happened to leave this document behind on the copy machine, and I picked it up. Environmental and Social Standard number 7. Right of indigenous peoples, free, prior, and informed consent. What are you? You need to know what this is their backdoor plan. You need to be up on this if you're going to do what Rus is talking about, and this is what I'm saying to you now, and I will close. The butterfly sun, you have it just like we have it. Just like you have the moon, too, the same cycles. That's the ecology. The agenda, what they call the map. The mapping. When I told Wolverine, what you guys did here with equipment, with that project, those 4 ladies in the jail, we're going to doing it the whole continent. We're going to doing it the whole Mother Earth. It's been in process now for some time now. The next step is going to happen next year in the 2020, in the spring and in the fall. When this fall appears, spring down there, all the way, and the same thing like that. And so at those 2 butterfly sun, what they call the equinox of 2020, there's a reason I'm here is to share that message to you, with you. There's a call for all of the original nations, the star nations, to reemerge. It's an emergence. To reemerge in this time of emergency, to see ourselves as who we are, what we are, and reemerge in synchronized fashion, coordinated, according to an agenda of our own making, not their agenda, our own agenda, tied to our relationship with Father, Son, and the star nations, the fall and the spring, continental, indigenous uprising, Abya no? The other part of it. October the 12th, not October the 12th, 1492. October the 12th this year, and every year that we have to. What we did at Standing Rock, the doctrine of discovery, it's dead. It's a zombie doctrine. We're going to hit that stake in every October the 12th from here on and on and on and on and on until there's no longer an October the 12th there no more. But we have a specific recommendation and proposal that we have been called for. The United Nations produced a United Nations preliminary study on the doctrine of discovery in 2010. And since then, what? They dropped the ball. But they dropped the ball, but we never dropped the ball. We've been carrying that self-determination of denunciation and clarification about the zombie doctrine forward ever since then till then. We've been to Mexico, we've been to Colombia, we've been to all the way to Honduras. We're putting together the full study of the doctrine of discovery at the continental level, and we hope to present that. We plan to present that along with the cartography project of Abya next year, and I'm going to close. This is an invitation, and we have some documents to share with you the background of what I'm about to say. Next year, probably 2020, in Colombia, in the territory of the Cauca, the Nasa Nations, the World Indigenous Law Conference, number 5, is going to be convening in Colombia. We're here to extend that invitation to you so that as we go forward in defining our strategy, we always know that we're going to confront their legal systems, what they call their legal systems, but they are not legal systems, they're legaloid systems. If they were legal systems, the law of harmony, peace, and beauty would be the reality, and we know that's not the case. Ayo.
And again later, maybe.
Okay. I'll just bring it over here. Okay, thank you. So I'll just call the next panel up. I've already spoken to you, so just come on up. Ruben, Ariel, Melina, and my sister, so Canus. And thank you again for the panel, Rus, Santi, Janice, Tom, and Tupac. So another round of applause. I'll announce it later. Just Tupac. Wait. We are gonna have one more panel, depending on the length, and we'll stop for lunch around 1-ish. Yeah. So wait. You could get up and stretch your legs a bit. So.